Welcome to HR Voices. A podcast for independent HR and people professionals and the businesses they support. HR Voices is brought to you by the expert team at HR Independence Limited. We hope you enjoy.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another edition of the HR Voices podcast, which is brought to you by the HR Independence Group. I'm here as always with my colleague Mary. Hi Mary. And we have a guest today as well, and her name is Lisa Thompson. And Lisa is with an organisation called Mountain HR. And what I will do is I'm going to get Lisa to introduce herself because she'll do it far better than we will. But what Lisa's going to be talking to us about today is a really interesting topic around how we can support women who are, pregnant and going through pregnancy and going into and then out of maternity leave, and some of the challenges and how we can help them get through that in a very supportive way, which is very interesting to hear what she has to say. So, Lisa, tell us a bit about you and your background.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I'm really excited to be here. So yes, I'm Lisa Thompson from Mountain HR. I'm an independent HR consultant, and I work with companies to make sure that all of their policies, procedures, initiatives, benefits are inclusive, and so that everybody can feel that they can be themselves at work, they can feel safe at work. One of the areas that I'm particularly passionate about is supporting women in the workplace. So like I said, today we're going to talk about pregnancy and returning to work, but I'm also really keen that we support women throughout their whole journey. So whether it's fertility, pregnancy, maternity, menopause, with invisible illnesses like endometriosis and things like that, just to getting employers thinking about the things that women naturally go through and how we can better support them so they can thrive at work and not face any more barriers.
Yeah, I think very pertinent topic at the moment, directly linked to the most recent employment law updates as well, in terms of protecting rights of women and pregnant women, and right through to when they come back from maternity leave as well. So very pertinent topic. So thank you very much for joining us once again today. So just tell us, why is this a particular area of interest to you?
Well, I think, I'm a mother. My son is now coming up to 6 years old. I've worked in HR for 17 years. I think I've seen things done really well and I've seen things done really badly. And I've also seen the effect that when things don't go right on people and their families. And it's really important, the workforce is probably, 50% women, if you think about it. And there's all these things that we go through on a day-to-day, month-by-month, year-by-year basis that are just ignored. And we're expected to kind of carry on and pretend it's not happening. And I think, like you said, there's more rights and legislation now that protects women. And, in October, there's more protections coming in around harassment and stuff. And I think now is the time for businesses to get prepared, get everything in place, start taking this seriously. And for me personally, I have had a journey with this as well. I've been discriminated against at work. And I've also had, following my son's birth, I had postnatal PTSD, I had anxiety. That affected my career and the kind of trajectory that I went on. And I think if there had been better support there, better understanding, if I'd felt that I could have been more open about it at that point, then things might have been different for me. And so I'm just really keen that other people don't go through this, because there are some really simple things that we can do that stop this happening. And, I coach women through their pregnancy and on their return to work, and I speak to them, and some of the things that are happening to them just don't have a place in today's society. And it's not just women, it's parents as a whole. Anybody can be a parent and anybody can go through this. So when I talk about women or females, hopefully synonymously, that's parents. I'm talking about anybody who's on a parenting journey or become a parent recently.
I think that is very important, because I'm pretty sure all of us around the table today have either been subjected to or privy to discussions where the moment recruitment decisions are being made right from the beginning of the employee life cycle, where they go, well, women of childbearing age? Actually, no, because they're going to go off and have a baby soon, and I'm going to have to recruit somebody to replace them, and the training and this and that. So I think a lot of work has been done around it, but there's still an awful lot that needs to be done before we even get to the point where these discussions are effectively eradicated from the workplace, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think sometimes women are almost demoted before they've even thought about having a child. They say, oh, how many times have you heard it? Oh, she's got married. That means she'll have a kid in a couple of years and then she'll have another one. And you can just feel them withdrawing their support and opportunities for these women. And we don't live in that traditional society anymore where things are that easy. Not everybody wants to have children. Those who do want to have children, sadly, some of them can't. So you just have to go by what's in front of you. Who's in front of you? Are they the best person for the job? Are they doing an excellent job? And go from there. And it's stop this kind of unconscious bias and the assumptions that people are making about somebody who's not even done anything yet. So I think that's really important as well. And I think as HR professionals, we can challenge that. When we hear those little phrases, oh, she's just got married. Oh, well, she's coming back. She'll probably have another one, And for me, as a parent of an only child, that really sticks with me, And I think we can say, hang on, sorry, what do you mean by that? Or what's your thinking there? Gently challenge it and say, okay, well, actually, we don't know what this person's plans are. We don't know.
Ooh, she's under 40.
Yeah.
Without actually saying, oh, she's married or she's going to have a child or she might be thinking about having a child. It's like, ooh, she's under 40. And that is an implied statement that, oh, at some point, this person might be seriously thinking about taking maternity leave.
And it's just when you hear those little flags, just not letting them go and just saying, sorry, what do you mean by that? Can we talk about your thinking there and just challenge it? Because the more that we don't challenge it, the more these things just slip by and they're insidious. So we need to really make sure that we are jumping on it when we hear it.
Sorry,
I've had this very same case recently. So the situation I dealt with, a manager he told me that he had made assumptions that because she was moving in with her partner and getting married, that then potentially there was going to be a family to follow. So yeah, it's still there. And I think what's also very interesting for Mary and I, with speaking to a lot of the independent practitioners that we speak to, is probably, I don't know what percentage you'd say, Mary, but I'd say probably 85-90% of the independents we speak to are people, whether that's male or female, who have stepped out of corporate because of childcare management and needing more flexibility, and they just can't do what they need to do in the normal working format. They need more flexibility and space and time and need to do things their own way, and they just can't get the support they need, so they set up on their own.
I think, yes, that flexible working does play a key part in why people set up their consultancies, in addition to a number of reasons, including having sort of your own ability to do the job you love and love what you do and work with a variety of clients, etc. I would definitely agree that flexibility is high up there in terms of even, I think these days things are slightly better with COVID, post-COVID, and employers generally accepting that flexibility is here to stay effectively. It has been around for a long time. It's not a new thing. It's probably been around for as long as we've all been in the workplace, but it was granted to a privileged few. And hopefully with COVID, most employers are recognizing that being flexible doesn't equate to less productivity. And actually it's the opposite, because people who absolutely need that flexibility do appreciate it when they are given that opportunity, and they don't really misuse or abuse it at all.
No, that's totally true. I think if you treat people with that trust and you value them, they don't take advantage of it. You might occasionally get somebody who does. But if you do, then you've got bigger problems anyway. You've probably got more performance issues, you've probably got absence issues, but for the majority of people, if you give them trust, if you give them value, if you give them flexibility, you'll get it back in dividends. Whereas if you treat people really strictly and say you've got to be here by this point and you can't leave, and you've got to have this breaks, and I think that is becoming a thing of the past. But those organizations do exist, those people with those mindsets do exist. And I think one of the things that I've seen is also that when a parent does get flexibility, they put up with so much other stuff because they have that flexibility as well. So in some cases, it holds them to ransom. They think, oh, I've got a job, I can work 3 days a week, I can work flexible hours, but I get treated quite badly. But I'm going to put up with it because I can't go and find another job because I won't get that flexibility again. And I think that's really sad that a lot of parents are being held to ransom in that way.
Right. So talking about how employers, especially SMEs, can support women in the workplace, or parents or potential parents in the workplace, from pregnancy through to post-childbirth. What are some of the things that they can do? Because I'm pretty sure someone may be listening thinking, well, it's easy for you to say, give them this, give them that. Yeah, HR for you. But in real terms, how can businesses create that supportive environment and actually realize that it's a benefit both to the businesses and to the individuals, not just to the individuals?
Yeah, and I think, especially with smaller companies, with smaller budgets, it doesn't have to be all singing, bells, whistling, it can be very simple things that you can do that help people feel supported. It hasn't got to be really expensive benefits. And I think the first thing really that they can do is to understand their own obligations first, and not wait until something comes up and then having to go and investigate it. So if you've got people in front of you who are asking you questions, it's so much better if you can say, yes, we've got a policy on this, we've got a process on this, we can support you through this is all the stuff we've got in place, and this is how it will work, rather than, oh, it's not come up before, oh, I'll have to check. Because that person then feels like they are making a fuss, that they are out of the ordinary. So I think my first advice to employers is to get prepared. You're going to be hiring women and parents. So what are the rules? What are your obligations? What policies do you need in place? What extra guidance do you need in place? Who have you got to train? And these aren't things that cost money. They're things that employers have to do. Know what maternity rules are, and know what, about appointments, about kit days, about risk assessments, about using holiday. Just know all these things up front so that when you've got somebody in front of you who's going through it, it's smooth, it's streamlined. So, and I think this is particularly true if you take a step back to fertility treatment as well. It may never come up, but it probably will. And so if you can have that support, the policies, the processes in place for that moment when that parent comes to you, or potential parent comes to you and says, this is what I'm going through, they will feel so much more supportive. They won't feel like, oh gosh, there's going to be meetings about me, they're going to talk about me, everyone's going to know what I'm going through. A lot of this is deeply personal. So have those policies, have those processes readily available on, and so that people haven't got to ask for them. That's the other main thing. Most people, are thinking about starting a family. They do look at these policies and processes months in advance of it happening. And they don't necessarily want to go to an HR person or their manager and say, oh, can I have the maternity policy? Can I have the fertility policy? Have them there readily available. Have them in plain English, really easy to understand. Maternity and paternity, shared parental leave. Sometimes if you're reading the government website on it, it's like reading board game instructions. So put it into plain English in a way that the person reading it can understand. And they're already going to feel that they've got a foundation of knowledge and confidence. Then don't make them fight for things or make them fight for information or things that are their rights. Have them in the policies, have them clear, let them know what's there. I was talking to a woman the other day, and she was 25 weeks pregnant, and her HR department still hadn't got back to her after she'd emailed them at 12 weeks to let them know that she was pregnant. That's such a long amount of time. And this isn't the kind of thing where you can wait, So it's if your process involves HR having a conversation with the parent, then have that conversation. have the risk assessment. Don't say, oh, well, she doesn't do a physical job, so she doesn't need a risk assessment. There are so many other risks rather than picking up heavy stuff, hazardous materials, that kind of thing. There's stress, there's well-being, there's physical symptoms that people need to deal with. So have these things in place, have managers trained with them, have, whoever is responsible for HR or your HR consultant, make sure that they are, on board with it, and have it in place so that it's just smooth and it's streamlined. And, when it comes to returning to work, the flexible working requests, you hear so often that it was a fight and it gets very acrimonious and, this person's got to come back to work, or they're going to say that process was horrible, I'm not coming back now. So, have those conversations with managers, be open-minded about flexible working and the benefits to the business. Because if it goes wrong, you might lose the maternity cover and that person who's coming back from maternity, and you'll be left with nobody, and you've got to recruit and start from scratch. It's so much more in a business's interest to keep employees happy and loyal and engaged and feeling valued. It's cheaper when you've got lower turnover. If you're not bought into the moral and ethical reasons, buy into the business reasons.
I think you've touched on a number of reasons there, Lisa, and we may have a few minutes to unpack some of them, really. Mm-hmm. So if you go back to the beginning, I would say that setting the policy, having your policies, the processes, etc., is just the beginning. The key bits where value is added from HR and people responsible for these policies and procedures in the workplace is ensuring that it's embedded within the company's culture and is embedded throughout. So right from the beginning, when you have people joining your organization, making them aware where these policies are. It doesn't matter whether they are male, female, or whichever gender they identify with. Do let them know where your policies are, how they can access them. Make sure they have copies during that induction period that they really can read and understand, and make it easy for them to come to you with questions, things that they are not sort of very confident in or comfortable with. And also going through that, train your managers, train your supervisors, your leaders, whoever might be the first point of contact that this person can go to say, hey, I'm pregnant, I'm expecting, I'm thinking about adopting, I'm going through a fertility treatment, etc., to make it easy for them to do. And respecting people's confidentiality around that is also very important. Yes, the individual needs to inform the employer, but not your entire workforce needs to know. Even if there are just 5 of you, not everyone needs to know that this person is going through this process. So it's quite important that you respect the confidentiality, and where people need to know because someone's absence might impact on somebody's job, then have some sort of agreement in place on how these are communicated. And the interesting thing about the example you just cited between informing an employer when someone is 12 weeks pregnant to HR taking more than 12 and a half weeks or 13 weeks to come back to them, that is shocking, really shocking, absolutely.
And this wasn't a small company, it was a big company with a big HR team. But the inference was that the person had been written off. Oh, well, she's going, let's forget about her. And it's just so heartbreaking because this person really loved her job. She loved working there. She was fully intent on going back. But the experience that she was having was making her think twice about that. And that is such a shame, for the sake of a meeting, which shouldn't take any more than, an hour, that the HR person should be prepared for, should be doing on a regular basis. And then just coming back to what you said about confidentiality as well, I do think that many people think that when they disclose something, they've set a ball rolling. And if I tell one person, everybody's going to know. And that's a real shame as well. I think, as HR professionals, we so need to be keeping these kind of things so confidential because they are so private. And I don't know how these things get out, but sometimes they do. And suddenly everybody knows. And I think, again, that needs to be challenged as well. If that happens, then you have to get to the source of how it came out and you have to have a serious conversation with that person about their professionality.
There are times that some people will have to be informed let's say you work within a big organization or even a small organization, you've informed HR or you've informed your line manager. There may be times that maybe your team lead or someone like that, or whoever is scheduling your work, etc., might need to know, because when you are absent or whatever, they have to make sure that there is cover for business needs to be met, etc. But there's a way of going on about it that it doesn't become a loud hail. Oh, listen, Mary's pregnant.
Yeah, it's a need to know, isn't it? It's an absolute need to know. I mean, I had an experience where when I was pregnant, I wasn't going to tell anybody until 12 weeks, but I had a really important meeting at 6 weeks, and these two people were coming in and they were like, oh, this meeting is really important. We've both got the flu, but we'll come in. And I knew that I was going to be sitting in a tiny meeting room with two people with the flu for about 3 hours. And I just said, look, and I kept trying to say, no, you're not well, don't come in. But it got to the point where I had to say, look, okay, this is what's happening. There's no way I'm sitting in a room with you. And so I did have to tell them, but it was handled really discreetly and nobody else knew until I was ready. And that was brilliant. So yes, there's always going to be times when other people have to know, but it's so important that there's a culture of trust in a company and people aren't going to think, oh, well, if I tell this person, everyone's going to know. That's really important.
Yeah,
but it's a culture of care as well, isn't it? Because actually, with some care and compassion and probably a conversation with your pregnant employee, or that's going through other things, you can actually sit down and say to them, look, okay, how should we manage the comms on this? Who can we tell? Who don't? How do you feel about it? We do need to do a risk assessment, and if there are any findings, we may need to tell certain people that certain measures and control measures are in place. But you can work together on that to do it in the sort of best way possible.
I think that's true of reasonable adjustments, isn't it? Like on a wider basis as well. If you've got something and you need a reasonable adjustment put in place, again, you have to have that conversation of, well, I can get this for you, I can put it in place, it will really support you, but some other people are going to need to know some details. And it's having that conversation with that person to say, look, we're doing it because we care, we're doing it because we want to support you, and these are the reasons why. People know, are you comfortable with that? And if you're not comfortable with that, then we're going to have to find another way around it. But it's having that conversation with somebody and them being involved in the decision to share, I think, is really important.
Yeah. Also, the other bit to talk about a bit is, okay, the employee has informed you, you've congratulated them, you're happy for them, etc. How can the business then support them throughout their pregnancy and also prepare them for maternity leave?
Okay, so I think there's a few different elements to this. There's okay, what do we have to do? What do we legally have to do? What do we need to get in place? What do we need to agree? So a smooth process of getting the dates agreed, getting those risk assessments in, offering any extra support that you might have, and getting all those things just sorted nice and quickly and done. And then I think it's, okay, that element of not expecting them to just carry on as normal, because they can't, and there's this fine line here of what we've been talking about before about writing people off or discrimination. You can't make assumptions for people, but you also need to be really careful that you are looking after them. They may have morning sickness, they may have lack of sleep, physical symptoms, emotional symptoms. And so it's making sure that you're checking in with them in a, okay, how are you doing? Is there anything we need to talk about? Not you're pregnant, are you all right kind of thing. It's, let's have a check-in, let's talk about it, let's acknowledge it openly, so that you can bring things up. So you haven't got to just pretend that everything's the same. And then, I speak to women who have a lot of concerns about going on maternity leave. Who's going to cover my job? Are they going to be better than me? Will everything fall apart when I walk out the door? So it's, involving them in, if there is going to be cover, involving them in those discussions, not necessarily in the recruitment, but in the kind of discussions and the preparation for that, and who would be the best person for the job. Possibly being involved in the handover if the dates all kind of work out, and then also agreeing communication while somebody's off. Some people may say, I'm going, I will get back in contact with you when I'm ready. Some people may say, actually, yeah, I'd quite like regular updates. And then, of course, there's going to be things that they might have to tell them about changes in the company and things like that.
I think there are a number of things to touch on there. The fact that we absolutely need to highlight that regardless of whether the person who comes into the role is better than the individual going on maternity leave or not, they are legally protected to come back to either the same job or to a similar role before their maternity leave if there's any restructure. And then the second aspect of it is also in terms of keeping in touch. Let's also remind our listeners that the first 2 weeks is statutory leave. So you cannot really rush to, even if someone agrees to be contacted, they need the first 2 weeks leave to at least recover from sort of having a child, etc. So I think those are really important to include. And I'm saying that not likely from personal experience, not kidding, but I was on a maternity ward and I was being asked questions.
No.
I just
How anybody can think about anything else apart from their new baby in the first 2 weeks. You're not going to get much sense out of people.
And it's because I was happy to be contacted. And I was contacted. And I think one key thing that really pregnant women or people going on maternity or adoption leave, etc., do worry a lot about is money.
Yeah.
So it's important to explain to people what their pay is going to look like throughout the time that they are on leave, and not use it as a leverage to effectively say, oh, you need to come back to work because you're not going to get paid. That's not the point at all. But the point is whether you just offer the statutory maternity pay or whether your company offers enhanced maternity pay, and what that actually looks like to them, how it's going to, it shouldn't do, but how it's going to affect any benefits that they may be on. There might be people who will be working and getting commission and against targets, etc., whilst they are in work when they are on maternity leave. How does that affect them, etc.? So there's quite a lot to unpack, but very simple. Like you said, if you've got a process in place, it should all fall in place. But I'm trying to highlight that it's not, here you go, here's our process, go and sort it out.
Providing a breakdown. You can say they're estimates, they're approximate amounts, but a breakdown so that people can see when the levels are going to drop. But I think also touching on that as well, if someone's not eligible for SMP, not just saying, oh, you have to get maternity allowance, go to the job centre, or you've got to just actually helping them through that process as well. It's bringing in processes that aren't necessarily HR related, but will support that employee throughout when they come back to work or throughout maternity, providing them information about childcare support and benefits and things like that. And that's quite a simple thing to do. You can put a document together that's got a highlight with some links, and you can say, oh, did you know when you come back to work, these are the things that you might be eligible for, or these are the things to be thinking about. And all these little touches help them feel supported by their employer. They make it say, look, we care, we want to make this process as easy as possible for you, rather than, okay, you've got to go out there and navigate it. So these little things that, again, don't cost money, they might cost a little bit of time putting them together, but putting them together and giving them to an employee really does help. My employer gave me information on the childcare that was available. That really made it easier. I knew exactly where to go. I knew where to read it. I knew how to register. That's a really small thing, but it could go a long way, because obviously when you're coming back to work, childcare is a massive concern for people. And again, financial, childcare costs a lot of money. So if we can signpost people to help that they might be eligible for, then that will really help.
And also there are companies that offer enhanced maternity pay who would require the employee to come back for a certain period, or refund or give them some money back to the company. It's also very important that it's clear. It does make very clear to the employee so that they know, if for whatever reason they are planning to move on, they know what the financial implications might be for the decisions that they are taking.
Yeah, but I think for businesses, I can see why businesses, especially small businesses, do it. But I do think there's the thing to be wary of in the fact that, okay, so you might have had maternity cover that you've recruited. They go off, get another new job. The person comes back for 3-6 months because they don't want to pay their maternity back. They're only there because they don't want to pay their maternity back. And then they resign at the end. And again, you're left with nobody, and you've got to recruit and retrain, and that will cost so much more in the long run than whatever the enhanced maternity pay was. If you are offering enhanced maternity pay, I think, wholeheartedly offer it, not with a kind of strings attached. That would be for an employer who wants to really embrace these enhanced benefits, that would be my probably controversial advice.
I guess it will depend on how much it's enhanced, wouldn't it? So if it's a small enhancement, then they might not feel quite so worried about it. But I mean, some of that is down to the size of the business, isn't it? Because the smaller the business, the bigger amount of money is to lose.
Yeah, small businesses don't always have the resources to enhance massively. So, and I think it's weighing that up as a small business. Are we willing to pay this if they don't come back? And if you're not, then maybe statutory only is the way to go. Or, have other ways of benefits.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot, and it's an really interesting topic that's close to all of our hearts, having been through the whole mum thing and juggling everything and still juggling everything. But how would we wrap up perhaps your top 3 tips maybe for a small business and how they can get themselves in shape for supporting their pregnant employees or their employees that are looking to start a family somehow?
Okay, so tip 1 is definitely have your policies and procedures in place before it even happens. So be ready for it when someone comes along and asks the question or discloses that news. Find out what your obligations are as a company, prepare for it financially, and have your policies and processes in place, and train your managers on those policies and processes, because you don't always know who they're going to disclose their pregnancy to. It's not always the person that you might think it should be. So the first one is get prepared. The second one is keep it simple, with your policies, processes, plain English, easy to understand, easy to access, and easy to get extra support if you need it. And then I think my third tip would be to kind of skip to the end, so that when the employee is coming back to work, going through an almost re-induction period with them. They're going to come back and they're going to be a different person. They've been through pregnancy, they've been through childbirth, they've had a small child. However much people think it won't change you, it does, and they are going to come back. They may have physical symptoms, they may have emotional symptoms that they're still dealing with. So not just expecting them to turn up on day one, the same person they were a year ago, and crack on with it. So re-onboard them, talk to them about changes in the company, changes to key stakeholders, relationship, industry news. Do they need some skills refreshed? And then also those check-ins with them. How are they doing? And, making sure that managers are all doing all the great things that they should be doing with one-to-ones and check-ins, and giving that support. And then also, if you do have an EAP or occupational health services that they can take advantage of, then making sure that they know about that as well. So it's almost like treating them as a new employee when they come back, not diminishing any of the good work that they've done before, not assuming that they've forgotten it all, but saying, okay, you're back now. It's fresh start. What do you need to know? Rather than just, on day one, right, there you go, there's your desk again, get on with it.
It's great advice, and something I'll definitely be making sure I have a look at in policies and procedures for maternity from now on, I think. Thank you ever so much for your time, Lisa. It's very much appreciated. Well, I hope you've enjoyed listening to this edition of HR Voices podcast. You can follow us on all the usual channels and follow our socials. If you would like to be a guest on our podcast, then you're welcome to email us at hrvoices@hrindependence.co.uk. We would love to have you. So thank you, Lisa, and we look forward to speaking to you all next time. Thanks for listening.
Great, thank you. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of HR Voices. If you have a topic you'd like us to cover or would like to be a guest, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us on social media or email us at hrvoices@hrindependence.co.uk. Tune in next time.